Hello everybody. Alright, so today we are taking a very long extended look at Gran Turismo Sport, and right now what you're seeing is custom race mode. And I'm speeding through everything real nice and quick. You can see that in the lower right hand corner. If you're the eagle-eyed type, you could see that I lost connection to the internet. That unfortunately seems to happen on my particular internet connection. I can change that and make it more stable, but for right now, I just want to record a lot of single player type stuff. There is a campaign in this game, so all you people who are worried that there's no campaign, don't worry about it. In the top hand section of the screen, the little cinema bar there, you can see that there's a table of contents. So you can go ahead and skip anywhere you like in this video based on that little time code there, and that'll help you out. You can hear the engine being used, and I'll play those later on in the video clip. So yeah, just speeding through a lot of the options here, showing you what you can do, making this a little bit harder to drive for some reason because I'm an idiot, and want to make it hard because, you know, that kind of proves that I'm good at this in some sick, demented, masochistic way. Then we're gonna just start playing. Of course, I could have skipped all of that stuff and went right into the race instantly after the 46-second loading period. It's almost, you know, that's like 46.9 for this particular track with this many cars and stuff. And here I'm just speeding through, changing the camera perspective there, and you can see that the perspective is now very stiff. It's locked, nice and sharp lock to the back of the car. A lot of people didn't like this about Gran Turismo, so I'm just kind of demonstrating that it can be changed, as well as the markers being turned on and off. And you can see the car's details and stuff. You can get reasonably close. Like every car seems to have a different near component, and you can see now that the camera is staying like locked behind the car, but it's allowing the car to like nose in a different direction. I don't really like this because it makes the car look like it's kind of sliding around. I don't really like it. It seems very fake. So I changed the camera settings a little bit later on. You can notice there's not very much you know, pop-in on these vehicles. There's reflection maps that seem to change, but it doesn't seem to change the quality of the car model. I'm not sure how they managed to do that. So like you could see that red car right ahead, the GT ended up getting like its reflections taken on, or it took on some reflections as it get closer to the car that I'm driving. But when it, you know, when it got closer, it didn't actually get really that much better looking. So now, of course, you can change the camera and make the car look like it's driving around in a nice way there. I don't really like the rear view. I really like bumper cam. I don't know why. Like, even though they have really nice detailed interiors and stuff, and I really respect the amount of hard work that they went through to represent these in game, I'm perfectly fine with bumper cam. And I know a lot of people are like, what? But, you know, the reason why they did this is for VR. And when, or if, hopefully when I get the PSVR, I'll check it out, definitely. I don't care if it's one-on-one, personally. I just want to see all this stuff up close. So you can see the AI are pretty smart. They do drive in different ways, just like in Gran Turismo 5 and 6. The cars are not perfect like in Gran Turismo 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. The cars do make mistakes. They can go off the road and stuff like that, the AI. And it seems very natural, you know. And most of the time, you know, when they do leave the track and stuff, they also wait. Now, I think it was their waiting was a bit aggressive because they could end up waiting and joining the pack last. Like, there is just no real drive to just get right on the track. You know, it's really responsible, I guess. It makes the AI seem very smart still, but at the same time, sort of like not caring that they're going to lose. So some people look at that and think it's fake, but I think that's more reasonable, because in real life you don't want another person in a vehicle, you know, 2-ton vehicle smashing into you at a high rate of speed while you're trying to rejoin the pack. Everybody's, you know, clamoring for first place, so it seems not unrealistic, but it doesn't seem, you know, as aggressive as probably what would occur in a real life race. Okay, like NASCAR or even Formula 1. Well, I don't know. In Formula 1, I see them wait, but like, what sort of moron? You know, these carbon fiber cars. Yes, they're made to fall apart on impact. So, you know, you have these cars going high rate of speed. Each one is pretty much even weight and all that. So as you can see, my car is actually, it's a Group B car. It's a lot slower than these ones, than my competition here. You know, yeah, this Mitsubishi Lancer is not as fast as the LaFerrari, so obviously, you know, it's taking its place pretty handily in front of all these other vehicles. So you will see, just like in Gran Turismo 5 and 6, the fastest car is usually the one that makes it the first place, which makes perfect sense. I guess a lot of people think that that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And you see the Bugatti Veyron right there. The reason why it's not in first place is because, you know, it actually isn't very good taking these corners. It's a heavy car, you know. I'm not sure. I heard that its brakes are just kind of like okay. Don't ask for this feature. It's not in the game. It's not an unlockable thing. It's something I did just because I felt it would be cool. So the pit crew, I've not heard this yet, but it is 30 frames per second. Everything that you saw there was animated at 30 frames per second. Now, I didn't actually review the video too much, and I don't know if there's motion blur applied to it. I don't remember seeing too much motion blur, but motion blur in this game, we'll get to that in a little bit with the replay. Very accomplished. And of course, you can slow down any part of this video. It's 60 frames per second. You can slow it down in YouTube now, even on mobile. You don't have to be on a PC or in like Google Chrome and, you know, use desktop mode and stuff like that. Look at the rear view mirrors, how they changed what was going on in like Gran Turismo, the beta and all that stuff. It does look like they're able to draw stuff further out into the background, and then it just kind of gets like there's a wipe basically, instead of a straight up like things are just culled from the rear view in weird ways. Now there's like an actual like distance wipe. There's a culling that occurs at a certain range. And it's still there, obviously, it's still obvious, but it's not as distracting as seeing all sorts of weird stuff pop out at different times, different intervals, different things. It all happens uniformly, and it's still shorter. Like, I think Gran Turismo 5 and 6, you know, they really pushed the boat out and made stuff fade or disappear at extremely long ranges. But it was obviously eating up on GPU resources too much. Also, Gran Turismo 5 did a little bit more trying to render out the car interiors of everyone's car to the same level as the player's car. You know, and while this is a lot lower quality than, say, when you're viewing your own interior from the internal perspective, camera perspective in game, you know, what ended up happening is that basically it just took up too much resources, I feel. You know, and that's why they took it out in Gran Turismo 6, and then the everybody else's car interiors looked really terrible. The same thing happens in this game. You know, it's the same deal. They strip everybody's cockpit interiors out, and they throw in your own and make them look really nice and detailed. You can see the windshield reflection. I want to talk about that for a few seconds. The windshield reflection looks a bit inaccurate because there is a bit of a shadow cast on the interior. And like, I don't know, man. You can see in the sunlight it's a little bit less easy to spot. I think in HDR it would be easier to see, but I don't know. Like, I haven't really seen too much HDR content except for, you know, like Digital Foundry's own video on Gran Turismo Sport, because it's been a few days. Like, they obviously have teams of people working on this stuff, and I'm just me. There's nobody else. This is everything you're seeing here was recorded on my own hardware, using my own tools, over several days worth of, you know, editing. And of course, I also don't do this full time. This is not my job. This is just a hobby. So I don't have the sort of resources to, you know, compete with them. So you can see that. Is that the LaFerrari? And I was messing up the other one. The other one was the 458. That one's the LaFerrari, I think. And it almost spun out there on the dirt. You can see that all of these cars are very, very detailed. But obviously your car is the most important one, and the interior of your car is much more detailed than the interiors of any other car on the track. Even in replay, what is called race photos in this version, they don't call it like replay photo mode or whatever. They don't try to make that distinction and throw it in your face all the time. Now they're just like, racing photos, and then you have your escapes, and that's pretty much it. It makes sense, you know. Escapes are a lot more accessible than the previous iterations of things in Gran Turismo 5 and 6, and even Gran Turismo 4. You know, and they're a lot more believable as well. You know, it's a lot more simple and believable than what is in Gran Turismo 4 through 6. And Gran Turismo 4 is the first time they actually introduced a photo mode. Replays have always been a thing in Gran Turismo. Since the very first game on the original PlayStation in 1997, all the way to now, replays have been a staple of the Gran Turismo franchise. And they're just, you know, they're extremely accomplished. And here, you know, you can slow down the footage and probably turn down your audio, and you'll see how, you know, amazing these replays look. Now, of course, this is base model PS4. This is not a PS4 Pro. And you can see that the motion blur on every vehicle, there's just so many samples. It's just a clean wipe. I mean, at speed, at playback speed, it looks really clean and clear, you know. And when you actually slow it down, you know, it obviously, you can see all of the motion blur. And it works, right? It works. And it looks great. Unlike in Gran Turismo 5 and 6 and HD concept and all that stuff, the motion blur, you can't see the samples. Like, I was looking at a few shots from the replay mode, especially when the car goes through the final stretch and to the finish line, and it's like, wow, you know, you can't really differentiate this from, like, just get rid of the text on the top and bottom bars there, and that would pass as a real picture. So of course I can just throw in some music. This is music from the game. This one is Life Thrills.
missing, we don't know it yet. Thought I didn't need a missus, I be focused. Long nights get cold when the tune stop. Traveling.
They have some really good music in this game, and I selected a few of my favorites and put them over this, but this was not recorded when I recorded the video.
Now hands up if you feel that. It's everybody in the building to the sky now. Hands up if you.
Another thing that kind of frustrated me about original Gran Turismo games when they started doing the reflection mapping in Gran Turismo 3, and then 4, is you could see that when your car passes under a bridge or there's a reflection on your vehicle, that it appears on every vehicle at the exact same time. That no longer happens in Gran Turismo Sport. You know, they changed the way that works, so every car gets a unique reflection. And what I've discovered by slowing all this footage down and stuff is that actually only a few cars are getting like a real-time reflection, and well, from the surrounding environment that really looks reasonably detailed, but you know, usually there's not too many cars in a particular area. So we're going to look at race photos, and you can instantly change the camera angle, unlike in Gran Turismo 5 and 6, especially 6, where, you know, it could take minutes. Actually, no, I think it was Gran Turismo 5 where it could take a couple of minutes for, like, camera change. And they don't have too many angles. Like in Gran Turismo 5, they tried to make like 64 or 70 angles per position. This time, they're just like, oh, what are our favorite ones? And we'll grab those. And you could just put the camera wherever the heck you want on the track anyway. So you can see there's a lot of functionality with the camera. And this is obviously, again, at 2.7 times. This mode is also 30 frames per second. Panning around, looking around, and seeing all that stuff. I'm using the accessibility options in the PS4 to zoom in extra, you know, so I can zoom in even more. And there you see it. Okay, so yeah, this is all 30 frames per second. Even the interface is actually updated at 30 frames per second in this case. And I didn't actually realize that. You know, I'm, I guess, not super sensitive to the frame rate stuff. I don't really give a crap about frame rates. When people are talking about 60 versus 30, I'm like, get real, get lost, you freaking losers. So there you go, like this is all 30 frames per second and at 2.7 times speed. You're not going to notice that, but here's the interiors that I was talking about. That's the Bugatti Veyron. And we'll take another look at most of these vehicles. You know, I spent a lot of time looking at these vehicles, which is why I fast forwarded this. This is like 2 hours. This whole one, this was like a culmination of 2 hours worth of straight up recording. And now, of course, I can record at a higher bitrate, which is why this looks a lot better than my previous videos, and at a higher frame rate without any errors. In Drive Club, you have a screen space reflection, so the car's body would be reflected in the roof scoop instead of the ground textures, is basically what I'm saying. And you don't see that in Gran Turismo Sport, but still, everything looks reasonably well detailed and accurate. It's a little bit remarkable because there is still some screen space reflections, just not self-reflections on the vehicles. And I think that just took too much power, you know. And when you go from replay mode to actual gameplay mode and vice versa, you know, there is no real change in the pipeline. It's just a change in the output refresh rate because there's going to be a lot more stuff going on screen, and because they added much more motion blur and stuff like that, you know. So this is one curious thing that I noticed is like the tire detail actually seems to be better when you're looking at the car in like regular mode you know, I'm not regular mode, but like through like scapes and stuff like that, the tires will be more detailed than they are when you're actually driving. Another thing a lot of people reject is the reality that when Gran Turismo shows a trailer or a video, even their opening cinematic, people are like, oh, that's not what the game's going to look like. That is exactly what the game's going to look like. That is all of the stuff since, like, Gran Turismo HD concept has been used, you know, when they make the trailers, it's just a higher resolution, basically, and more accomplished motion blur. But in many cases, the reflection maps, the car model details, stuff like that is unchanged from the actual in-game, you know, gameplay. So even since Gran Turismo 5, it's something that I've been saying for a long time, but now I'm actually able to show you on the PlayStation 4 that look at this, you know, just these tiny little things. You know, it's actually kind of funny that some of the decals end up looking way better than others, but obviously when it comes to individual textures and stuff like that on the car outside of like certain decals, you know, they spent a lot of time making sure the paint is correct and stuff like that. And now we're going to look at other aspects. You know, here we have some member on the track sign. This guy, I guess, is a marshal. And then you have his other guy there, you know, and they're all supposed to be just, look, they're different models, you know, even. They don't put the same model in the same spot. Now, of course, they are reused assets. There's going to be, like, this guy, I think, is the exact same guy as that guy, right? I think so. I'm not really 100% sure. We didn't spend a lot of time looking at him, but you can see there's not too many errors when it comes to texture alignment and stuff like that. Like you saw a small error like that. It's not a huge deal, especially since it's off the track. And, you know, you can see also there's a lot of detail that, you know, they were able to get this game running at 60 frames per second VSync without pretty much, there's no dips that I was able to see playing this game. You know, again, multiple hours of straight up recording. I actually have more video than just what's here, but this is the one that I was like, you know what, we're just gonna upload this. And this is not a real track, this is a fictional track. And I didn't really unlock too many real tracks by the time I started recording. I was like, you know what, we're just gonna start recording. We're gonna look at all the details that people say, you know, make Gran Turismo Sport look really bad. Like, oh, all the grass follows the camera. Well, there plainly you saw it. Not all grass follows the camera. Some of it is stuck to the ground, and you see some special elements like this one. This one, very highly detailed for some reason. You know, and it's super tiny, so you can't really be too upset that it's not like the most detailed thing ever. But you can only see it from certain angles anyway. So there are still some very small lighting bugs and stuff like that. This is still a real-time game, you know, and I am sure that that carries over to 60 frames per second as well. But again, you know, we are actually going really fast. I didn't expect to be going this fast, but you can see some grass obviously follows the camera. Still looks very good. You can see there's a lot of detail in the textures here. I think that's a seamless texture. And of course there's still text at the bottom of the screen, so if you don't want to listen to my voice, you can also read some of that. Let's see. You can definitely see there's a lot of detail in these barriers. And you can see that there is some sort of odd parallax occlusion mapping occurring here. Like, I tried to zoom in on it, I tried to show it, and I like still fast forwarded through this. There's other areas where you'll see it a lot easier. So there's definitely a high resolution on this. I think even at the output quality, that some of this detail won't come through. And you can slow this down to see some of the parallax occlusion effects a little bit better. You can see that a lot of the trackside rumbles, you know, very detailed. This little white line here is pretty detailed. It's a little bit lower resolution than what I expected, but it's still reasonably detailed there. You can see that line sort of looks like it's a little wavy. That's because there is parallax occlusion being put onto the trackside surface. All of the tarmac surfaces are treated the same in that respect. So there is parallax occlusion. This is like the most liberal use of parallax occlusion in a video game on PlayStation 4 that I've seen. I won't say on PC, because there are video games that do use parallax occlusion more liberally, but, you know, for such a small, you know, I mean, that's a high frequency detailed object, right? The textures in the road. And, you know, I don't know if that takes up more resources. I don't think it really should. You know, and I haven't really messed around too much with like parallax occlusion mapping. It's a little bit over my head when it comes to like rendering. But I know how it works and I know how to spot it and all that. You know, so that's how I actually pointed out the difference. And you can see we're looking at the Bugatti Veyron. This reminds me of Forza Motorsport 4, the Forza Vista mode. You can see that there is like no real geometry there. I mean, there is a lot of geometry, probably too much geometry. Like, you can't see all of the little segments that make up the individual constituent parts of the geometry. And I think that's very interesting because, again, this is occurring in-game, but this is an external engine bay, and you'll see that internal and external engine bays are treated very differently. And we look at that a lot later, but you can see, look at how detailed that is. Like, where are the sharp edges and stuff? You can see, of course, some of the plants obviously follow the camera permanently. For a small little thing like that, those little weeds and stuff, who cares, man? That's not a real big deal, but you can see up close on this vehicle. This very small object impressed me so much. There's even a screenshot at the end of this that zooms in like 400% and you can see it. And pause the video there and you know, just look at it without any real extra anti-aliasing stuff applied to it. But look at that, man, there's like no geometric information. It's like, well, sure, that's just because it's rendered. It's like, no, man, no. So we're gonna zoom out and we're gonna take another shot, and you can see once again it's like, where is the that looks like somebody just took that sort of pin out from the real world and plugged it into this video game car. And at this point, I zoom in, and I'm so impressed that I actually just used the touchpad, and instead of using the rendering function, see, like here I zoom in like that. But I'm trying to also show you that like that's super high quality. And I zoom out and I show you that you can just see this by hitting the touchpad button, and I take a screenshot right here. So you can see that at the end of the video, how detailed that is. And I believe that that sort of detail actually carries over into the gameplay, which is just, you know, if that's true, and I really do believe that it is, and it's sort of hard to believe, that is just, you know, that's the most detailed single item on a vehicle I've ever seen. Like, they spent enough time to like make that, you know, the model quality in this game is just absolutely phenomenal. There's a few other screenshots of things that I've taken. So here, do I change the actual? No, I just zoom in and I take another screenshot instead of waiting for it to render. So there you go, that's like another proof of concept. Here you can see, like, after looking at that other thing, this one is just like a 2D texture. I'm like, what the heck? But you can definitely see that there is a lot of detail, that they spent a lot of time making all these cars, and they do it from scratch. They don't have like the CAD data. But now you can see what they were working on PlayStation 3 with regards to making sure that everything is tessellated. They used in Gran Turismo 6, they used tessellation. on all of the car bodies, and it was really spotty. You know, you could actually take a picture of some things, you could see like the tessellation build up. You know, it's a nice smooth build up. It was like somebody's messing with the tessellation slider on it, the Haven benchmark basically, and that's a PC benchmark. And now, you know, I've also seen that. I played some Forza Motorsport 7. I'm going to show you some footage of that soon. You know, hint hint, wink wink. And I made the PC just kind of choke on that game. Of course, it's not like the most powerful PC in the world, but I definitely was able to record some video way higher quality than I ever expected to be processed on my computer. But it was, I recorded using Shadowplay 130 megabit per second, 60 frame per second video at 60 frames. Oh yeah, I said it was 60 frames per second already. What did I want to say? That it is 4K that I recorded it in. But when I imported it into my video editing software, it says it's 1080p and 120 frames per second. So that is really weird, you know. But needless to say, it takes a while to process. It was a huge file, by the way. I mean, I didn't even bother importing it. You know, I just basically, I left it on the hard drive, basically, and I was like, yeah, you know what? We're not going to wait the years that it would take to... I don't even really have that much space on my old laptop anyway. You know, so it's like, okay, fine. So I'll just use that and wait for the rendering. But you can definitely tell that, like, not only did it take days to record and stuff like that, it's what the end result, all of this here is taking quite a long time to render. You know, it takes a while. But what's really cool is that, again, like, you can see this now, the interior of the Ferrari. This is the LaFerrari, I believe. This is not the 458, if I'm not mistaken. You know, I personally, you know, I'm not really that much of a gearhead, but I do like Gran Turismo and all that. But you can definitely see this, like, this is still better quality than what you see in, like, Forza Motorsport 4. You know, like in Forza Motorsport 4, what they had for the Ferrari's interior, I might have a screenshot of that. I'm not sure if that'll be in this video, but, you know, it is like, oh my god, that is just absolutely ugly. You know, it's like looking at that, and then you're just looking around and you're seeing what is in Forza's, like Forza 4. That's like really terrible. But you can see there's a lot of detail. Like this particular car, actually most cars, they have grills like this, and you can see all the interior stuff, and it's all geometry. You know, I think I zoom in on that one. Don't I? I don't know, but you can see even the wing, they have all the screws and bolts and things there. This one as well. And this one also, I think, has an internal engine bay, which you might be able to see when you're in the cockpit mode and then looking backward. But in this mode, it's basically a dark cavernous pit. There's like nothing there, so I do check it out. And I mess around with the values to see if there's anything in there. It's like, it doesn't look like there's anything in there, so I don't need to continue looking. So yeah, I already figured out playing the open beta, which unfortunately I lost most of the video for. Like, I was actually going to upload a lot more videos recently, but I lost a lot of the videos because the capture software that I was using decided to delete an entire folder, which was fun. So I lost several days worth of recorded video. It was like over 200 gigabytes, which was really a pain in the butt. I got really upset about that, but you know, here you can see again, like this, like the in a pinch. The car bodies for all of these vehicles are just insanely detailed, and every car is like this, you know. And again, like, even though photo replays and stuff like that occur at a lower frame rate than actual gameplay, you know, the quality, like, does this even exist in Forza 7? You know, I played the demo and I didn't really notice as much detail as I'm seeing here. That's like the lowest resolution tailpipe in this game that I've seen so far. I'm not sure if the quality is bumped up further just because you're driving the car. But, you know, another look at the engine bay, it's like, wow, that is so detailed, you know. And I think I used the PlayStation 4's accessibility options for that. So now we're going to just do a track tour. So I already looked at some rumble pads and stuff like that, and you can see the crowds. Now again, whether you're playing or viewing a replay, these crowds are very detailed. I wanted to first show you how detailed this fence texture is. Man, that is something else, man. You know, I'm trying to like see if that's made out of actual geometry by like cutting through it a little bit with the camera, but that didn't work. So I can cut through the actual, you know, fence texture there. And these people, you know, some of them look like they're 2D. I'll give you credit there. Like, some of them look like they're 2D, and maybe they are. But when I'm looking around here, like, I was like, no. Look at all these people. These are all 3D assets, you know. So maybe a few of them looked like they're 2D assets, but as you can see, like, when I start panning around again, you can slow this down because I don't think I did. You can see they're all 3D. They do not follow the camera. Did I slow this down? It looks like I actually did. I did slow this down. Alright, so yeah, you can see that, yeah, those are 3D people there. And now I'm just going to speed past all that stuff, because now you can see this huge this huge crowd there. Also, how fast I was able to just go through. That was all, you know, I just swapped between all those frames. You know, there you go. That is the crowds. Also, these rumble pad things. Another thing is, like, again, the road texture seems to slip and slide under those things. That's because using parallax occlusion mapping. I also did kind of want to look at those rumbles a little bit in more detail, but I was like, yeah, whatever, it's a little boring, so I fast forwarded through it. And here you can see, yes, there are 3D, you know, objects as well. The rumble strips aren't always just flat. And then, of course, we have the trees. A big contentious thing is the trees are 2D. Yes, this tree is, but look at how well it's lit. And then you have this tree, which is 3D. You can see that there's a trunk and branches and stuff like that. And there's actually a huge mix. You know, a lot of the trees are mixed. So there's some key areas where you'll run into way more mixed 3D and 2D trees than you'll run into just straight up 2D trees. But a lot of the 2D trees are still way more detailed than the still 2D, but you have like a couple of cutouts intersecting with one another. That's how Forza still handles it. You know, so Forza Motorsport 7 still handles trees as cardboard cutouts. I'm trying to cut through the fence here to give you more of a better example of more 3D crowds, but unfortunately the fence here is a little bit too far away, so I'm not able to cut through it. But yeah, I'm like, well, you know, whatever. You guys get the hint. Those are all 3D assets there. Even the flags are 3D assets. Those guys are 3D assets. There's like almost no 2D assets in this game aside from the trees. Again, those trees going on are all 2D and they always face the camera. And then you have this. For some reason I got like really impressed with the oh, you could see the pop in here. Is that just shadows or is that actual detail? Like, I don't know, that's why I zoomed in and out on there, just in case you were wondering. So here, for some reason I was like really impressed with how like realistic this metal, you know, signpost thing looks. I was like, huh, this looks really cool for some reason. And I'm looking at all the individual pieces that make it up. You can move the camera around a lot more freely in Gran Turismo Sport, which does give you a lot of freedom to look around and see all that stuff. And you can see that that one last thing is just like little sticks. So, I don't know, they cut that little corner there. It's like, that's forgivable, I guess. You can see, initially I thought that was like just a texture for the interior, but it's just a door. So I passed by that. You can see the fence itself, that's also 3D, all of those little assets. are all 3D. It's even anchored into the ground. It's not like floating there. Every little aspect of these fences is 3D. Again, this tree, that tree to the right is 2D, but this tree to the left obviously is 3D. A lot of 2D trees here. Again, they are handled very well, and you can see that this particular 3D tree is used a few more times, and then you have another set of 3D trees there. And you can see as we get closer to this hairpin turn, you're going to see a lot more 3D trees as well. So you can see that tree is 3D, and then that tree is 3D. Initially I didn't notice that helicopter in the background, maybe you guys did the first time, but I actually take a closer look at that as well. And this is all the way on the other side of the track, undoubtedly not rendered while you're watching the replay, but it's something that could, you know, like for some reason the PlayStation 4 can instantly switch. Maybe it's just down to the amount of RAM that's in the PS4 versus the PS3. Like they really pushed the boat out on Gran Turismo 5 and 6, but the system could not handle it, and the PlayStation 4 can. So that's why they have all this stuff. So why did they get rid of dynamic weather and all that stuff? Honestly, I don't exactly know. You can see how detailed this helicopter is, and I try to actually see whether or not the blades will rotate if you use a slower shutter speed, and it doesn't. So you can put that, you know, thing to rest. So yeah, lowering the shutter speed doesn't change how the helicopter moves, which was kind of a bummer, but it's like, okay, whatever, it's not really a big deal. It's really far away, but it's like, it's fixed location sort of thing. And now, of course, I'm just looking around using the touchpad and the analog sticks, pressing in the touchpad. You can see how detailed all of the different textures, even that dirt texture is. Now, granted, it's not perfect, but it's not terrible. So we're coming close to the end. That's me talking for 50 minutes. We're just gonna speed past here and look at some other things. You can see everything off in the distance. You know, they really tried to make this look very detailed, and I think they succeeded. You know, again, you have to remember this is 60 frames per second V-Sync all the time. You know, and they managed to keep the performance up, you know, and looking at Gran Turismo 4, 5, and 6, you know, they pushed the boat out on all of those systems, and they suffered the consequences. Like, PlayStation 2 used every trick in the book. They used every trick in the book to make sure that the performance is up, and this is an example of just taking a photo from anywhere, you know, and it looks good, you know, it looks really good. I'm not sure you could get away with that in most other games. I know you can't really get away with that in Forza. You know, no offense, you guys. I mean, I played the demo. I know what the game actually looks like. I know how it runs, and you're going to see a little bit of that, you know, eventually in the future, very soon. And, you know, this game just looks so much better. You even have like a frame advance for those special photo modes. You do have also the traditional stuff that Gran Turismo is known for. You can swap between all these different vehicles on the fly and see how well they were doing, their times, sections, speeds, all that stuff. It's all there, you know. Unfortunately, like the acceleration, braking, and all that stuff seems to be missing right now. And that might be added. I don't really... Again, I don't care if that stuff's added or not, and maybe they won't add it just to keep, you know, focusing on more content, like new cars and tracks. And, you know, like right now what I've seen from the game is nothing but, you know, nothing short of extraordinary. Like, this is just, you know, mind-boggling. And you'll see how good, like Gran Turismo 5 and 6, or, well, actually just 5, I didn't really have any screenshots of Gran Turismo 6, and even how well this game sort of stacks up compared to the competition, again, in this very video. But it is sort of like a mind-blowing thing, you know. Wow, I mean, it's it's really amazing what they're able to do. Now, actually, for this one, I can't remember if this is 60 frames per second or 30. And again, this is like where I'm like looking around and like, wait, is this 60 or 30 frames per second? It looks like it's probably 60. Actually, I take that back. This looks like it's probably 30 frames per second. But Digital Foundry said it's like 60 frames per second. So I don't know. Like, I'd have to slow that down myself to see whether it's 60 or 30. But when you're looking at the replays, like, I really couldn't care less if it's 60 or 30. But of course, you know, PlayStation 4 objectively gets more frames per second out of it. And if you got a PS4 Pro, you know, then you'll get those 60 frame per second replays. Unlike on base model PS4 like this one. Now, again, I'm like showing how fast you can swap through all the different cars. I think I kind of like screwed up there because I'm like looking at the same camera angle and stuff. I should have just like went from the back of the pack, or maybe I should have went from, yeah, the back of the pack to the front of the pack. But yeah, that's basically what the game looks like. It's pretty amazing. You can see again those crowds off in the you know, distance there, and you can see what the game used to look like. Like, this is Gran Turismo HD concept, as it says. These are just screenshots from the game. Still looks alright. I mean, there's jagged stuff there, and this looked amazing back in 2006. But, you know, these are just screenshots. There is no photo mode in this game. This is all raw screenshots. Then you have Prologue. Again, no photo mode in Prologue. These are all race replay. Replay is just screenshots from the replay mode. And then we get into Gran Turismo 6. This is actually Project Cars, that one. This is still Gran Turismo 5, actually. But the full game, and you have photo mode now. So you're able to see what the photos look like in Gran Turismo 5. You know. And, you know, now games, you know, look a little bit better. If you slow down or pause on any of these photos, you'll see that these are actually in-game shots, and then these are photo mode. And then we have a few shots from, you know, the new Gran Turismo Sport. This was from, I think this was from the open beta. I think. I can't, don't quote me on that. Even some of the escapes. I think these are from when I got the new game. Pretty sure. Pretty sure. Not 100%, but pretty sure. I think those, yeah, this was from the open beta. I took these shots from the open beta. Then I had the video for it, but that was what was lost. Took a lot of shots, not all of them very good, so these are some of the better ones. And you can see it looks like that in-game and after rendering. And then you have close-up shots from in the game, screenshots, including that one, which is zoomed in. And then every game will eventually look pretty much like Drive Club. I still think Drive Club looks, it takes the edge in some respect. You know, I mean, gosh, look at that. That's amazing. And then, of course, we're going to go to rolling the credits, you know. Personally, again, I still think Drive Club is a lot better looking. Of course, again, the engine sounds and everything played. And then you have Forza Motorsport 7. This is some of my recorded gameplay of Forza Motorsport 7 with a lot of assists turned on. And you can see some pop out. This is not a good thing. This is very, very realistic, man. Super realistic. Everything disappears in Forza Motorsport 7. Yeah. Oh my God, it's such low resolution textures there. Nice grass effects though. I gotta say, there's a lot of grass. You can see how much grass is on the ground. Pretty liberal, I guess. You know, there's a lot of empty space there, but it looks all right. I think there's a little bit more coverage than in Gran Turismo Sport. Not sure that really matters too much when there's no ground. You can see the shadows, regardless whether this is functioning properly or not. The shadows from my car do not cast on the other car. So what I did here is I was actually playing the game in 8K with 8 times MSAA. So I used the dynamic resolution scaler, set that to 200%, playing in 4K, and used MSA. Wait, what did I say? I did use MSAA times 8 with again the resolution scaler set to 200%. It's not dynamic. And what else did I do? I also brought up the resolution. Yeah, the in-game resolution was set to 2K. No, 4K. 4K, there we go. So you see that guy. He's actually a 2D cardboard cutout. We'll probably examine those guys in another video. But this is 2 laps. I go through the whole thing, I win, you know. And this is, again, with most of the assists turned on. You can see that skid management, or the stability management, I guess is really what it is. Or is that traction control? No, traction control I think is the one on the right, the far right there. No, that's anti-lock brakes. No, the one in the center is anti-lock brakes. What the heck is the one on the far right? Okay, so I guess the stability management must be the one on the far left, and the anti-lock brakes is the one in the center there. You can see that it's on as I'm braking there, trying to stay out of the dirt. I'm not sure. I guess the one on the far right is traction control, I assume. And that doesn't seem to kick in much, so I guess I could turn that off the next time I play. But you can see it, like, I'm way ahead of the competition. Of course, they race perfectly, even though they can't see the road. The only reason why I'm able to stay on the road is because I turned the braking line on. If I had left that off, I'd probably be all over the freaking place until the grass starts showing up and stuff. But yeah, you can definitely see how that could be a problem. Even the helicopter, like, pops in and out depending on where you are. Of course, the clouds, the rolling cloud simulation in this game is not really a simulation at all. It's a photo. It's actually a bunch of videos and photos that are mixed together, you know, and they play, and sometimes you can see them transition very harshly. It looks very, you know, when you do spot it, it's pretty distracting, and that can happen again whether the game's playing at a locked 60 frames per second or not. Now, of course, what I was playing on, this computer that I was playing on and recording from happened to have a GTX 1070 GPU in it, 16 gigabytes of RAM, DDR4 RAM. I'm not sure exactly what its memory bus was, you know, so I don't know how fast the memory is. You know, just ballpark, because DDR4 has a certain ballpark frequency, but I don't know exactly how fast that was. 8 gigabytes. I know that there was 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 video RAM because that's what it said in the system specifications. Looking at the computer, you know, Windows 10 obviously it was on this particular computer. And it just sort of blows my mind, you know, that this is how the game operates. Of course, again, 8K, this particular GPU isn't made for 8K, and of course when I played at a much more reasonable, you know, everything was maxed out, but it was 1080p 60 frames per second, it actually held that target most of the time, except for when I wrecked, and then it would drop 1 or 2 frames, you know, and I realized that after video, you know, editing. So when I went to review the video, that's when I went through it frame by frame. I was like, okay, so I went through 30 frames, you know, 30 seconds of footage, you know, and anytime there was a wreck, you know, I looked at it and I was like, oh, well, you're dropping 2 frames, whoop-de-doo. Like, when did I notice? I didn't. So, you know, all these guys off on the left and right and the pits, they're all 2D. And they, again, whether the game's loading properly or not, you know, that happens. Now, of course, again, like in this case, I triggered it by taxing the GPU and CPU. Now, I'm sure this is taxing the CPU much more than people expect, which is why this ended up happening. So yeah, I mean, that's just the way that this game works. Of course, even when it is working perfectly, running at 60 frames per second, there's still a lot of 2D assets, there's still a lot of lighting issues, and these carry over into the Xbox version of the game. There's still a lot of log popping. I don't notice if you noticed in the window the log popping. Of course, my computers, the computer that I was using in this case, those specifications are on there. My computer specifications, my laptop. You know, yeah. Again, those specifications, you know, like harken back to that Crysis 3. Was it Crysis 3? Yeah, I compared Crysis 3 video way back in the day. You know, yeah, this is the computer that I was using for this recording to record this video was much better than the computer that I'm using. So, you know, yeah. Well, that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a great day.